Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today because the International Booker Prize was announced this afternoon. I was working and I did not get to watch the actual announcement live as it was happening. I had to catch up to it once I had settled down some work things, but this is exciting. The winner was Time Shelter by Georgi, Gospodinov, and translated by Angela Rodel. It was a very strong long list and then short list this year. It seems I have still only read one of the books, and that is Boulder by Baltasar. But there are a lot of really interesting books that were on the International Booker long list and short list this year. That is why this has become a prize that I kind of enjoy following. It puts books in front of me that otherwise I might not have discovered, and I really deeply appreciate that. I love using long lists and short lists as a sort of tool for discovery, and the International Booker is one that has really done a lot to broaden my reading horizons and put translated literature in front of me, which of course is the intention of the prize. So I have not read Time Shelter yet, but it does sound really interesting, and we'll talk about it a little bit. First, let's talk about the books from the short list that obviously did not win. They are Stillborn by Guadalupe Nettel, translated by Rosalind Harvey. This is a book that does sound very interesting. I don't believe it has been released in the United States yet, and I'm kind of waiting for it to be released here. That's why I haven't grabbed a copy of this, because I think of the titles on the shortlist, obviously Boulder is the one that I ran out and read immediately, but I think Stillborn is the one that I will probably be trying to get to next. And I just think it sounds like a really interesting book. So it did not win, but I will still be looking forward to reading it at some point. Then we have Standing Heavy by GauZ, translated by Wynne. This is another book that I am curious about. I can't remember if it has been released in the United States yet, but I am definitely curious about it. And it seems like this is a book that people have liked. It's not one that people have talked about as much as some of the others on the shortlist. However, it does sound really interesting to me. And I think I would do Stillborn before I would do Standing Heavy. However, I am very interested in it as well. The only one on the shortlist that I was not particularly interested in is The Gospel According to the New World by Maryse, Condé, translated by Richard Philcox. This one doesn't really hit a lot of my interests. I have heard some good feedback about it. It's been a little bit mixed, and that, of course, means that I don't feel too compelled to bypass my initial reaction to the book, which is that it just doesn't sound like something I would be particularly interested in. However, it did feel a little bit like there could be a narrative building for Maryse Condé, because she is a legend of Caribbean literature, and this is likely her last book. I believe she is either in the process of going blind or has already. And I believe this book was actually dictated to her husband, who then translated it as well. I could be wrong about those details. But so it felt like there was a sort of narrative where if people wanted to follow narratives, they could reward her for that, because this could very well be their last opportunity to do so. Obviously, that did not end up being the case. But hopefully, just being part of the shortlist did put her work in front of a lot more people. Of the books on the shortlist, it's probably the one I would wait until last to get to. However, it does sound interesting, and it does sound like she has had a very notable career. And then there is Whale by Cheon Myeong-kwan, translated by Cheon Kim. I've heard some wild feedback about this one. It sounds very odd. When I first saw it on the long list, I was immediately interested, and then as I was reading the plot description, I kind of was like, this sounds like a lot. And I've seen some reactions. This is one of the books that people have read most, I would say. I've seen people reading Whale and Time Shelter the most, I think. And the reactions to Whale have kind of been all over the place. Some people have really loved it. I believe Roro Reads loved it. Some people have been a bit more measured, and some people thought it was kind of bizarre. Like, what did I just read? And I don't know how I would react if I got to it. So I would be curious. But definitely, I think if I were going to rank them, Boulder is the one I obviously got to first. Then I would do Stillborn. Then I would do Standing Heavy. Then I would do Whale. And then I would do The Gospel According to the New World. And I know I didn't put Time Shelter in there. We'll get to it. And then, of course, there was Boulder by Baltasar and translated by Julia Sanches. I really liked this book. And if Boulder, a book that I think is really exceptionally good and beautifully written, didn't win, then it makes me even more curious to read Time Shelter, because if the standard of quality is that high, that really says something. Boulder was a fantastic book, and it's a very short book. I believe it's 105 pages, but the book didn't start until page 7. So that kind of gives you an idea of how short it is. And yet it packs a really powerful punch. I think it is beautiful and thoughtful, and I would definitely recommend it. You could do a lot worse than that if you're looking for quality literature. Now, let's get into Time Shelter. So this is definitely another book that had jumped out to me from the long list. It wasn't, I think, again, if I were going to rank the total list, I'd probably say Boulder obviously was first, because I already read that one. Then I would probably do Stillborn, and then I actually think I would put Time Shelter before Standing Heavy. So it would be the third book most interesting to me from the shortlist. And I'm not trying to review this book, by the way, because people sometimes take these reactions as me trying to review these books. I am not trying to do that at all. Again, I like to use a long list and a short list as a tool for discovery, and the Booker International Prize has been very good for that in recent years. So I would absolutely be curious to read Time Shelter. This is another one that a lot of people have read based on the long list and the short list. And the reactions have been very interesting, mostly positive. I've heard a lot of really interesting things about it. So I am looking forward to it. This is one that is released in the United States right now. So I may put a hold on it at the library, but we're heading into June, and June is when I read books for Pride Month, so I don't think I would be able to get to it if it became available right now. So I'm probably going to hold off until later in the summer and see where I'm at. If you are unfamiliar with this book, here is what it says about it on Bookshop. Give me one moment to pull it up because I accidentally kind of closed it. All right. In an apricot-colored building in Zurich, surrounded by curiously planted forget-me-nots, Gustine has opened the first Clinic of the Past, an institution that offers an inspired treatment for Alzheimer's sufferers. Each floor reproduces a past decade in minute detail, allowing patients to transport themselves back in time to unlock what is left of their fading memories. Serving as Gustine's assistant, the narrator is tasked with collecting the flotsam and jetsam of the past, from 1960s furniture and 1940s shirt buttons to nostalgic scents and even wisps of afternoon light. But as the charade becomes more convincing, an increasing number of healthy people seek out the clinic to escape from the dead end of their daily lives, a development that results in an unexpected conundrum when the past begins to invade the present. Through sharply satirical, labyrinth-like vignettes reminiscent of Italo Calvino and Franz Kafka, the narrator recounts in breathtaking prose just how he became entrenched in a plot to stop time itself. And from what I've heard, it sounds like in the present day, countries start deciding which decade they are going to live in, which is an interesting approach. And it is kind of getting at the idea of how dangerous it can be to idealize the past, which is something that I think it's easy to think things used to be better, things used to be easier. And then when you actually get into it, you realize how complicated the past is. For instance, I did a Q&A a while ago, and somebody asked me if I could live in a book or a time period, where would I be? And I'd just I would stay right here because, as a gay man, I need to be here because this is where it is best for me to live, and I can be married and all of that stuff. So you have the idea that the past is a lot more complicated than people might immediately want to think that it is. And this sounds like a book that really reckons with that, which is a very interesting concept. And it sounds like it does it in a very tricky way, but from what I've heard, a very good way as well. It is the first Bulgarian novel that was originally published in Bulgarian to make it to definitely the short list, I believe the long list as well, and definitely the first to win as well. And I believe in his speech, Georgi Gospodinov mentioned that it was his first book to be translated into English. So hopefully there will be more of those coming in the past, because I know of the reactions to this book that I have seen online, at least in my corner of BookTube. There are a lot of people who would be curious to read more of his books. So hopefully there will be more coming in the future. And there wasn't too much exciting in the announcement itself. When I watched it later, there was a nice brief speech from Leila Slimani, who was the chair of the judges. And if you have not read Leila Slimani's books, I would definitely recommend them. I have read 2 of them. And I felt like Boulder definitely feels like a book she would probably like based on the books of hers that I have read. Stillborn sounds like a book that she would be really interested in, so you can see her fingerprints. But she had really interesting things to say about the process of being on a jury and judging fiction, and how she, as a writer, was thinking, how can I judge someone else's books? And then had to think back of her original passion, which was reading. And that was interesting. And the ways in which she said they came together and had different opinions and could bring their own perspective to the novels. It was very interesting. Georgi Gospodinov's speech was very, very nice. I don't, to be honest, I don't think there was anything particularly memorable about it. Angela Rodel was a bit more emotional about it, and although there weren't any real standout moments from the announcement itself. However, I will link the announcement video in the description box down below if you would like to watch it. It's always fun to see these things happen in real time when they are done with the amount of ceremony that the booker usually does. So I will leave it down below if you would like to check it out. I don't think there was too much to grab onto from that announcement, but it is always nice to watch these things happen and unfold. So another international booker year is now at rest. I believe the booker itself is going to be a little bit later this year, so we'll have to wait a bit before we get that, but that's fine. We're kind of getting ready to conclude the first wave of book award season. It comes in 2 waves in the year. In the spring, you get the International Booker. Now we have the Carol Shields Prize as well, and you have the Women's Prize and the Pulitzer Prize. Pulitzer Prize has happened. My reaction video will be down below. Women's Prize will be announced on June 14th, and that is obviously still to come. I'll have my shortlist reaction video down below because it'll be very interesting to see what happens with that prize as well. That is another one that had a really solid-looking long list and shortlist, and I'm really rooting for Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, but it just won the Pulitzer, and she's already won a Women's Prize, so I am not feeling that it's going to be her, but I would love to see it happen because I am a huge fan of Demon Copperhead. So that is still to come on June 14th, and then after that we have a bit of a break before we get into the second wave of book award season with the Booker proper and the National Book Award and the Nobel Prize for Literature. But that's we still have the Women's Prize to go, but we're coming to the close of the first wave of book award season. I would love to hear your thoughts about the International Booker Prize announcement, and I know a lot of people have read Time Shelter, so if you have thoughts about it, let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear about them. If you were rooting for a different book and you're sad about this, let me know in the comment section down below as well. And if you're still burning up about something from the long list that did not make it to the short list, let me know that as well. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.